Hello, Stream Queens Con I almost said day 4, day 2 attendees. Welcome to the fourth annual Indigenous Peoples Panel. My name is Blade. I have hosted this panel 3 years in a row now, in attendance all 4 years. Today I'm joined with a brand new guest to the Indigenous Peoples panel. So could you feel free to introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and what's your identity as an Indigenous person?
Halito Sahochifo ya Dukunt or Quack. Um, Hello, my name is in drag. My name is Dukunt, spelled out Duck Hunt, but the H is silent. And then out of drag, I go by Quack. Um, Chata Sia Chata Oka Sia Hata Kolba Sia. I am Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, as well as I identify as Hata Kolba, which is a specifically Choctaw gender that the other non non male female gender. It roughly in the translates to imperfect male or imperfect guy without the negative connotation of imperfection. And that is the best way I have found to describe myself.
Well, thank you for joining us today. Even though this is the fourth annual Indigenous panel, I will still give a little bit of explanation as to, like, what's going on here today. First and foremost, my name is Blade. I'm a drag visual artist, and now I can say award-nominated filmmaker. I am a Chumash Native American. I typically don't attach Native American to it, but just so you can understand where I'm coming from. And so the Indigenous Peoples panel intends to hear from Indigenous voices about our experiences and kind of break down walls on misconceptions, because when people hear the term Indigenous, they tend to just think First Nations or Native American people or Indigenous is a very broad term. So we're going to be, but in years past, we have kind of focused on the negative aspects, you could say, of our experiences. Just that's how the conversation has gone. And while that is important to talk about, this year we're setting out to be celebratory of our culture and share our culture with the audience. So that's what we're here to do. And with that being said, my first question is, what would you say the impact of your Indigenous culture has in your day-to-day life?
Um, it has impacted my day-to-day life with everything I do in a lot of ways. Um, from um, just like being like how you interact with the world in a way, and just like taking in like different routines and traditions that you make part of your life that just you um Indigenous futurity is something that I'm really passionate about, and so like doing little like routines or ceremony type like little things to bring back and like pull in from your ancestors with everything you do, um like I have like taking care of your altar like to your ancestors, making things like um smudging the house regularly, and like um whenever I'm braiding my hair and everything, doing that with intentions and just working on that. I do a lot of harm reduction volunteer work and harm reduction advocation as well. And I view decolonization as harm reduction. Indigenous futurity can't happen with harm reduction as well. And so um, spreading it that way.
Yeah, I love hearing about how people's differing cultures influence their different lives because, I think as Indigenous people, our experience tends to be quite generalized. People think it's all the same and it's not. Like even just from hearing how you carry it in your everyday life varies extremely different from me in my daily life because I don't necessarily practice any like daily, like I don't know what you'd call like rituals, even though I'm dressed like somebody in a
Yeah.
ritual, but the way I carry it in my day-to-day life is honestly I feel like people kind of think it's silly, so I always feel kind of dumb talking about it, but you know, fuck what the white people have to think. Because for me, like I was always kind of taught, everything has a spirit, whether it's a rock or a tree or a flower or whatever. So I kind of go through my day-to-day life treating everything with that attitude where it has a spirit and I'm connected to it. I've always been so connected to nature. When I'm out in nature, I feel like it's speaking back to me. And I also, and growing up, I was always taught, our ancestors are going to speak to us. And for a long time, I wouldn't say I didn't believe it, but I had no examples of it until my grandfather, who basically raised me, passed away. And I began to notice when I would go through like hardship that like feathers would appear to me, and it wasn't that they would just appear like out on the street or places where it was explainable. They started appearing in places that were like really hard to dismiss. Like I remember one time I was in a freaking Target and there was a black feather on the floor like way in the back of the store, and I was like, how can that be here? I think one of the more bizarre ones too was I was going through like a really specific situation and I picked up a random book, and I had there was no reason for me to pick it up. I just picked it up, and when I opened it, the page had a feather on it, and it had a poem that was really specific to what was happening to me. And I was like, that's they're speaking to me and they want me to know something. So for me, I almost feel like the way I carry my culture with me every day is less so what I do and more so picking up on the world around me and how I relate to it. Um,
I I definitely feel that very much as well. Um, yeah, I um, take care like with the I live right in central Seattle, so I don't get to be around as much nature as I want all the time, but um, like I take care of like the birds around me and always say hello to all the animals around me, and also like I also raise where like every like rock and flower and everything has a spirit as well, and it's just where that is everything is being thankful. um and I also relate to, I've been estranged from, sadly I've become estranged from a good chunk of my Chata side of my family, and in recent years have been working on reconnecting with local community to reconnect. But my while my immediate family, my father and my auntie are supportive of me, um, the rest aren't. Um, I've never technically come out to them as trans because of just the experience I've already had with them by when I was already openly queer. is not that is not accepting for me, so I become but in recent um like in the last year, I think while I've been reconnecting and like learning beadwork is some beadwork stuff and everything. um it's something. I used to be a candy kid. I mean, I still rave and do some candy stuff every once in a while, but not where I used to be a candy kid raver and did a lot of beadwork with pony beads and everything. And then and there's a lot of those are beadwork stitches that are just on larger scale. And so working on some of the beadwork that I've been learning, some of the things I haven't had not been able to figure out how they would work transferred to the smaller scale. Um, and like for doing like the more intricate kind of thing. And I had like in my dreams, I had someone like, I don't know who it was, but it was definitely like an ancestor of one of my ancestors coming and teaching me and like showing me how to do the specific, like, this is how you fix this little piece that you're not able to figure out. And it was the first time I've had someone like come into my dream to help teach me, and it was really powerful.
Yeah, I kind of relate, not exactly the same because I haven't been estranged by people active like who were actively in my life, but I um my so as far as I know, my grandmother, that my great grandmother I never met because she passed away, was really she was like really tied to the culture, like really, like she was the one like keeping everybody still practicing things and carrying on like traditions. But after her passing, like the people who didn't, like after that, like kind of didn't. So I was the next person in line that kind of like I had to reintroduce myself back into everything and kind of discover stuff, you know. So beforehand, when I would see like dream catchers and whatever, I kind of just thought like that's like a fun little thing. But now I have this understanding. I make them myself, and I know, you know, things that a lot of people don't realize about them, that they hold a lot of meaning.
Yeah.
You know, it varies from tribe to tribe or culture to
Yeah.
culture, but you know, it
Those
for
dream
me, it's
cultures
like
aren't
it's
used in my culture.
mm, yeah. See, that's what I'm saying. People generalize it as like it's an everybody thing, but it's not. Like for my tribe, for Chumash people, it is. And for us, you know, it represents like the circle of life, and it's different feathers, different types of feathers and different types of colors mean different things, and so does the beadwork within them. And I don't know, it's really unfortunate when you have to reconnect yourself and it's not something that's given to you. But I'm really glad you brought up like queer identity, because I think a lot of people assume that Indigenous people are automatically acceptant of queer identity because it's in the culture, but it's not the truth. Like I've known for a long time about like two spirit identities and different sort of identities and things that you can be that are tied to Indigenous cultures, but that doesn't, it unfortunately does not mean it's a guarantee that your Indigenous family or siblings are going to accept you, especially because, you know, people who aren't Indigenous already have so many opinions going from left and right. You know, like some people don't even like me because I'm a bisexual man, and they don't like that I'm like not queer enough for them. So it's always interesting to me how it relates over to Indigenous culture, because people just automatically assume, okay, well, you're going to be accepted. But just like with your story, it's not always the case by any means.
And also, tribe to tribe, um, there's a lot of tribes that like there are tribes that are have become a lot more like uh, as Chata. Um, our tribe became is one of the known as the civilized tribes or whatever. But it's because we had to assimilate so fast. We were tribes of the Trail of Tears. We had lost all of our most all of our elders dying through the Trail of Tears and everything. So and having to assimilate, and so the Choctaw government itself is very Christian, and like while they do have acknowledge some stuff and everything, acknowledging the queerness and two spirit stuff and everything is still not the most like it's not the most accepted thing in the tribe in general because of the assimilation that has had to happen for survival.
Yeah, and I honestly think it's that like assimilation as far as indigenous people goes, it's weirdly not like talked about. I feel like it's kind of like brushed under the rug. Like a lot of people are always really shocked when I bring up the fact that in America and in Canada that there was full on like schools where, you know, indigenous kids
Right.
went to and they got not only did they get assimilated, but they got a lot of them are no longer with us. And it's like
Yeah.
it's an awful part of history that people just kind of like sweep away. And it's always so odd to me because in this day and age, I feel like the internet is so rampant on like not brushing stuff under the rug. But I hate to say it, but it is my opinion. I'll like forever stay firm in my opinion that people like low key do not care about indigenous peoples or indigenous problems. They might post about it on social media for like brownie points, but like they truly don't care. They don't do the research. Like it's just it's a to me it's a an unfortunate truth. And until I see any type of change, I'm always gonna hold that opinion. But to
Like
move to yeah.
yeah. Um I was never mind, I forgot what I was gonna say to go on with that, but never
But
mind.
to move us maybe into something a little bit more, you know, lighthearted. I'm never afraid to talk about nitty gritty, but I really want
Yeah.
to
Keep it
highlight
more
our
positive
culture.
also, yeah.
I would like to know what's maybe like a favorite memory of yours that you have that's associated with your culture or to your indigenous identity.
Um so because I'm being Choctaw Okla, I've grown up on the Pacific Northwest coast. I'm originally from Arcata, California, which is Northern California, and spent some time not living on the Hupa tribe res, but where my dad taught on the Hupa res reservation, and I spent a lot of time going down there until moving up here. And uh, when I moved up here, my early babysitter was a Tlingit woman and her family, and she they would always take us to because she was a button dance blanker and she's an artist and just did so many cool things that she would bring us to different events that she would host and um, do dancing and teach us the art, the uh, the line art and everything. And it was not my culture, but it was when I had first moved from, so I was not away, I was away from my grandma and who and like all my Chata family I was away from at that time. So it was like a nice we're not just being like welcomed into still like you're away from your family, but you can still have connections here, even though that. And then that plus in the last few years, I found a local group of we're all southeastern, so we've got Muskogees, Samoa, Cree, uh, Cherokee, all the bunch of southeastern Mound People tribes that we've been uh, have like meetings, like gatherings that we do, and we got to do one last October that we were learning like social dances and getting learned diamonds are something that we use a lot in our decoration of our shirts and our dresses and all of our um, and learning how to fold and sew the diamonds by elders that were there. Um, and like I finding when I get to find those times that it just everything feels like family while we're working and learning and practicing our traditions is I think those are always my favorite when we're gathered in community and
I guess um, for me, it's like for a memory, it's a little bit harder because I mean, I created the question because I wanted to know, but I guess I should answer it myself. My memory's a little bit like more specific to myself because um, I don't live super close to where my like people are like my reservation which I want to make something really clear where my reservation is at versus where like my like land is two very different
oh
things
same
because like there's places in California that are literally like names that my tribe like or
yeah
like from words from my tribe but somehow my reservation is like miles away but that's besides the point. I'm not near the area so I don't have too many memories associated in that way. But what I do remember is um, outside of my like online presence or my drag presence, I'm a writer and I have a couple published poetry collections floating out there in the world. And one of my most recent ones kind of talked a lot about like spirit and things like that. And it was like the first time in my like life where I felt so powerful, not just within myself, but powerful in my spirit and like my identity as an Indigenous person because I felt so like I don't know, I just remember I felt like I was like on fire because I don't really talk about it a lot online, but I've had a very hard life and I don't think people would necessarily assume that like looking at me because I don't show it, but I've had a very like I mean I didn't even realize the amount of trauma I even had until I finally did go to therapy. And even the therapist was like, oh my God, like you don't even know how like strong of a person you are to be here. But so I wrote about a lot of those experiences. I finally like let it out into the world, but in a lot of it, it was through really connecting with my spirit and finding that strength. And I remember like there was just so much poetry that was like I'm strong. And I guess my specific memory that I'm trying to get to those I wrote a poem and it was called Wind Dancer and I called myself the Wind Dancer and it was about how no matter what was coming at me I learned how to dance with the wind, not against it. And I just remember feeling so I just felt so powerful because it took a long road to get there and say, you know, I'm a fighter. Um
it's
well,
beautiful
thank you. I mean, it was like, yeah, I mean, I did put out a drag project as well that kind of touched upon it a little bit, but I wasn't at that point in my life, so it didn't feel the same. But I would like to know, in your opinion, you know, because there is such a wide variety of people that fall under like what people would label as indigenous because it is kind of a label. We're all our own separate
Yeah.
entities. What would you say makes your, if not your culture, at least your identity as an indigenous person unique?
Uh, um, maybe culturally, um, Chata, while there's a lot of the with whitewashing and everything, there may have been more. A lot of there's a lot of there's a lot of like women not participating in war dances or um participating in war in general or and like uh being able to carry feathers certain feathers and everything, which there are still like some limitations on like when whether certain feathers can be carried and everything for but um as cha-cha war dance is both women and men are very much that it's a both being involved in the our war dances, which I know that is more unique compared to a lot of at least um, Turtle Island, uh, North Turtle Island Indigenous.
It's actually interesting you mentioned Turtle Island because I feel like that's exactly what I was going to say about what makes my like tribe unique is that for those of you that don't know, Turtle Island could be considered like I don't know. I feel like it differs, so I don't want to like give like a blanket statement, but the land that we're on currently right now is considered what you might consider North America's Turtle Island. At least to me, that's how I know it.
Yeah, it's
But
either North and South America. I've heard both of them be included, but like yeah, the
but for my people, even though we so like growing up, what they kind of well, I shouldn't say growing up because I had to find out slightly later in life about
yeah
my culture, but um all of our like ties to Turtle Island are kind of they came later because in our tribe there's a story about how we were created and we weren't created on Turtle Island. The story is that there was an island, this is a real island too, off the coast of California where um the like mother nature she um like put seeds into the ground to kind of make us, but um we were being like the people were being like too loud and rambunctious and she wanted her peace. So her way of fixing that was she created a rainbow bridge and the Chumash people walked over the bridge and that's how they arrived at Turtle Island. But following that, I think the story's a little bit like blurry on me right now because I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm very tired. But um there was still some sort of problem with how we were behaving once we arrived. So actually, in my tribe, we believe that we're brothers and sisters and siblings with dolphins because a lot of our people were like quite like turned into dolphins and their spirit is carried into dolphins, which we call alakoi. So for my tribe, we're very closely tied to the ocean and dolphins. And the whole point of my story, though, is that what makes us unique is that we're not necessarily, at least in our belief, uh, our home isn't necessarily where we began is not Turtle Island.
yeah, that's really yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, because the Chumash people are connected to, like, if anyone's familiar with California geography, where like places like Pismo Beach
Right.
and
It's southern.
Cayucas are all like those are all Chumash words, but for whatever unknown reason, the reservation's all the way down in like Santa Barbara, which is it's not wrong, but it's also not totally right, you know. But the whole freaking continent was stolen from the people who were here first, so I guess I can't be surprised.
Yeah.
Um,
That is
so
one other thing is like like the Choctaw and the Cherokee and a lot of the southeastern tribes prior to colonization weren't really much separated tribes as much as they are now. We were all mound people, like it was all mound people, and it was all a thing that got destroyed um, with colonization and more of uh, split up because of that.
Um, so I want to make a little bit of a transition, and I think we've both kind of touched upon it a little bit already in what we've already said, but I want to ask, have you always been aware of your culture and your background as an Indigenous person, or was it something that came later in life, or maybe did you know but you weren't too connected to it? Like, what was that journey like?
For me, it's been it's always been like I've always known that it was something that I was always raised to like be proud of it. I like where growing up I had a relationship with my grand lived near my grandma and had a relationship with my grandma. You know, she would tell me stories, um and like I had like involved and like going visiting the chief every time the chief was in town because the chief would travel, and like I for me it has been like where I've always been proud Indigenous and proud like Choctaw, um and I've had but it's been waves of connecting and like there's like things of when I was growing up that I was connected to, and then my parents and me moved up to Seattle area from Northern California, and so I was separated from a lot of that, and I was still surrounded by a lot of Pacific Northwest natives, and so I was still like involved with a lot of like local, more local stuff, a culture stuff for a while when I was younger. But then as I grew up, like I lost um, the connections in that besides like a lot of my friends growing up were I grew up in Snoqualmie, and a lot of my friends growing up in Snoqualmie um, were Snoqualmie, and like I remember in middle school, the Snoqualmie tribal building was like the only building that had an elevator, so that was one of the things we did for fun was went up and down in the elevator in the tribal building.
Oh no.
As like I mean we were like 11 and
Hmm.
13 and like in a small town that's downtown was literally a block. uh, it was us. That was our having fun without getting in actual trouble. But and then in recent years have been finding my like local community and to be able to work on reconnecting again, and um, slowly been working on learning language as well as learning how to make regalia, and also with my drag I very much include a lot of both non because I I make art myself, and I call it more non-traditional art. I made harm reduction inspired art, but I'm working on also including traditional aspects in that art as well. So um, things of like reconnecting with that have been more in the past few years again. But it's, yeah, so it's been waves of where I had good connections and then kind of wandered and then come back to it and then wander and been coming back to it again for the past few years. But like throughout the whole time, I've always been proud Indigenous.
Well, we have a new participant.
Halita.
Welcome to the party. Really quickly, would you mind just telling us who you are, what you do, and your Indigenous identity?
Buenas Hafide, Guahusi, Rokin. Hello, everyone. My name is Rokin. Sorry, I'm tardy to the party. I am currently actually in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and silly me, I just got the time zones mixed up. But my name is Rokin. I am a proud Chamorro person, queer at that as well. Um, so yeah, Chamorro being indigenous to the Mariana Islands, specifically the island of Guam, otherwise known as Guam. And my practice is primarily weaving, but that carries into many different mediums, visual art, fashion. I do a lot of workshops and a lot of talks. And yeah, I'm super happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I'm gonna ask a new question, and I'm gonna go ahead and let you answer first, as you just joined, to get your screen time in, and then we'll go down the line to the rest of us. What are some aspects of your culture, or maybe even your identity, that you kind of wish people knew? Like maybe they misinterpret it, or they just don't understand. Like, what do you wish that outside people understood?
Hmm, that's a really great question. Thank you for asking. I think for myself as a Chamorro person, oftentimes I wish, like, especially in particular, navigating the US, Guam, and the Marianas are currently seen as like a territory and commonwealth. So a lot of the first reactions that I get is like, oh, where is that? And it's just like, okay, y'all need to know your own um, history, your own like story of colonization, y'all, first and foremost. But we're also like so much more beyond that, right? And we're so much more than a military base. We're so much more than like like Hawaii. So I think people, I would really love to see people give us our own space and to tell our own story first and foremost. Um, Other than that, great food, like got a lot to contribute more than just what we see as like touristy. Got a lot more to contribute beyond that. And I know also for other BIPOC folk, I would love to see more visibility and also work towards solidarity because a lot of our work is interconnected, right? So I would love to see a lot more conversations around that.
Yeah, and then Quack, what about you?
Um, will you repeat the question again? Sorry.
Just like, what do you wish that people
Okay.
understood about your culture or your identity, either one?
Um, I I wish people understood the amount of like how much like sorry. I wish people understood how much like revitalization is going on and like how much like while like we're not extinct people. We're not like this. We aren't ancient history. Like we aren't something that is. Uh, we are like people that are living and thriving, and we are working on healing from the wounds of what colonization has done to us, and we are working on like there are so many of us that are working on making us like a open presence and work and trying to keep our traditions alive while people are consistently still trying to wipe us out and pretend like we don't exist anymore. We're just a storybook in the past about the past.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm gonna give my own answer, but I just want to comment on top of that because um, I think in the summer of this year, I went to the California History Museum, and it's always so interesting to me how, like, don't get me wrong, like, it's history. It happened a long time ago, so I understand why it's in a museum, but it's interesting how the language that is used is always as if like it's a thing, like it doesn't exist anymore. And I'm like, I'm still standing right here. Like, it's not like we're all dead and gone, even though it feels like the government might want that. Uh, but as far as my own answer, I kind of wish that people took us more seriously. And what I mean by that is I kind of touched upon it earlier. When I talk about how, like the tree in my backyard, to me it has a spirit, and I have a connection to that tree because of my spiritual beliefs and how I've been raised. And I kind of wish that people didn't brush that off as like silly, like fantasy almost kind of thing. Like people think it's kind of like almost juvenile to think that, whereas to me it's very serious. Like I'm like, no, like that's, like I believe this tree has a spirit the same way you have a spirit and I have a spirit, and we're all connected in that way. At least to me, that's how I feel. And I feel like when I people almost tend to like laugh it off or something. And I wish people would, even though it's not the same as religion, because it's not. I don't understand why people can be so easy to believe religious beliefs, but then when I believe something else, it's so like, well, that's cute.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre.
Yeah, it's almost like, when we talk about history, they see it as legend, or when we talk about like our creation stories and our mythologies, it's automatically discredited. And it's just like, okay, because we're not part of the big three, I guess that, they automatically dismiss it as foo or, still demonize it. And it's just like,
It's
2023, okay, we move beyond that. Thank you.
it's mythology if it's about our uh stories, but it's theology if it's about their religions, like their religious stories. Yeah.
And I do want to ask a bit more of I guess, a deeper question. This panel is intended to focus on highlighting us, but in to be able to like have that conversation, we do have to kind of talk about the not so fun side of things. So, and anyone can answer this first. But I want to hear your thoughts on why do you think that people tend to kind of generalize indigenous culture? It's all kind of viewed as one big thing when it's very much not. Just the three of us here have varying backgrounds and beliefs and everything. So why do you think we're so put into one big box?
I feel like it's easier for people, especially oppressors, to always just put people into the bigger box that they can. So it was so similar to that, like all queer people or like um, all black people are the same kind of thing without even acknowledging um, like Afro-Indigenous people or also like the difference between like we're calling all black people African American when there are plenty of black people in the United States that are African. They're not they're not like they've come here from Africa and they identify as African. But like I have friends that will get called African American and they're like, no. But it's just like if we put them everyone in these boxes, then we can more just get rid of a big box instead of these small little boxes. Um,
Yeah, I
it's
think
really
it has
cool.
everything to do with them and not us, right? Like
Yeah,
it's not on us that they can't conceive and comprehend the layers of nuance and diversity and the range that we got, right? So yeah, I think it's really on them.
like think of how many people think that all Native people live in fucking teepees. It's like,
Yeah, very much no.
Yeah.
But you know what? But the thing is, like I was saying earlier, for the people who still do, like the people need to be respectful of that. It's a very
yeah,
real thing.
oh yeah,
Um,
oh very much so. But I don't think any of our ancestors did. Like of the three of us here,
no.
yeah, and that's just like it's so.
I mean,
That's a very specific uh, area that lived in teepees.
Yeah,
I think
well,
it also has to do with like I remember I forget the name of that particular artist, but when he was going around like photographing native folks, oftentimes he would mix match regalia, you know. And so we really want to also think about like who's actually telling the story, right? And is it, you know, the people that who have traditionally held the stories, or is it just other people trying to come from the outside and get the shock value and highlight certain things and omit certain other things and try to copy paste for all these other people, right? I think there's been a history of that for so long that it's so the dissonance of actually trying to listen to Native peoples and their respective histories and their respective stories isn't something that people think about.
Uh, um, so like Choctaw had a lot of southeastern tribes. We didn't really have beadwork in the way that a lot of the Plains people had. It was something that once after the Trail of Tears and we got put in Oklahoma, the government had all these Plains people come to teach us beadwork so that way we could make beadwork and sell it kind of thing because we didn't have the access because like we had beadwork stuff that we would do but it would be made out of shells and like things like that off of the coast and out of the river um and now but so like there's a lot of beadwork stuff that I know that and other tribes have similar kind of things where it was we're going to move you to a reservation and then we'll have the people that are nearby you teach you these skills so that way um, because these are the ones that we can sell and make money through.
so we have about like I can't do math, but like I'll say like
Not,
eight-ish, like just under 10 minutes left. So the last question I want to present before we move into like our closing statements is what are we hopeful for the future of Indigenous people? Because you know we're very resilient people. We're very loud, I think. So I do hope to see some change and some really people really like advocating loudly. So what are we hopeful for going forward?
I think I'm hopeful for more people working on reconnecting and revitalizing our traditions. I'm hopeful for Indigenous futurity and being able to keep our traditions that are like alive in a modern world, maybe modernizing. Like there are certain things that like can be modernized in ways, but like ways that to keep things pursuing on and um, showing that we still are always here. And yeah.
I'm really hopeful for more moments like this, being able to connect with other Indigenous people and share the story and do a lot more listening, right? I think what's also important for us is that in the hustle and bustle of everything, that we get the opportunity to record and document our histories and hopes and our dreams like as we are now. But what's also important is the ability to rest, right? The whole colonial capitalist rat race is just to keep us, running in circles around each other and fighting each other just so we don't actually get a chance to heal. We don't actually get a chance to rest and be still and be with our lands, our waters, our peoples. So I'm really hopeful that we get to see each other and just be, just laugh, create, release, because I think a lot of us are really holding our breath. Because there's a lot of BS going on in the world, and it's all connected, and we know that we feel that. And so being able to mobilize and connect now and really take back the power, of telling our story and connecting with, platforms such as this, Zoom, social medias. As much as we're still figuring that out, and the drama that comes with it, I think really being able to utilize it and empower our own people to, like you mentioned, reconnect to each other, to ourselves, to the lands and waters. Yeah, I think we're already doing it, so I just hope that we're able to keep on keeping on and being able to take care of ourselves amongst all the madness is something that I really am hopeful for.
Yeah, and I think for me personally, I'm hopeful that the focus of like we'll just say the general population changes on where they believe our issues are at, because I've noticed in the United States, I don't know if it's because of cancel culture or what it's due to, but a lot of the focus from non-indigenous people is on like sensitivity issues, like football team names that are not accurate, that aren't respectful, or like wearing like headdresses. And while those are important cultural changes that should be made, I'm like, why can't we put the same energy that's going into something like that into missing and murdered Indigenous women, into people in the Navajo Nation who don't have like running water and basic necessities? Like, let's repurpose all of that like fire and fury into actually, not that the sensitivity stuff isn't important, but I want to focus on the livelihood of my siblings before the way we're presented in the media. Because I remember when the um, Lando Lakes took the Native woman artwork off of like all of their merchandise.
Yeah.
I was like, why are you guys more upset about a fictional woman who's missing and not like the hundreds of thousands who are actually missing, and there's nothing like done about it? So, okay. So with that being said, do we have anything you want to get off your chest? Anything you wish to say before we have to come to a close here?
I will always promote carrying naloxone and making sure to there's easy videos on how to use it. Getting trained is really easy. Harm reduction is important, and see what you can do to help. Volunteer for dance safe is great for if you're like going to parties, you can table at parties, and also then go to a party for like raves for free. Doing volunteer work, sharing education. I do volunteer work for PRA as well, People's Harm Reduction Alliance here in Seattle, that does amazing handing out Narcan, having like boofing kits, snorting kits. We hand out glass and sharps, containers, and needles and everything. And without taking care of yourself and your friends, because you might not know that your friends use drugs, but having Narcan on you can help save them because shame is sometimes they hide it. But yeah, um, harm reduction is the key to Indigenous futurity.
Okay, and we have about a
I just want to
minute.
say, Senwasi, for having me. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. I think piggybacking off the idea of getting over shame is asking your elders those questions, you know?
So we have about 1 minute. So I would like each of you, and we can start with. I really don't want to butcher pronunciation. Is it Roquin? Roquin?
Rokin, yeah,
Roquin.
all
Okay.
good.
We'll
Rokin,
start
yeah.
with you. Just remind us who you are again. Maybe tell us where we can find you if you do any social media or anything else in any capacity, and then we'll move on to Quack.
Yeah. Happy hello. My name is Rokin, Roquin. You can follow me in misadventures and my creations on Instagram. That's my primary medium at Rockin Rokin, ROCKIN_ROQUIN.
Sohochifo, yeah, Dekant or Quack. You can find my drag and costuming Instagram at Quackachu, QUACKACHU. And then also you can find my harm reduction wearable art. I make purses out of sharps containers and earrings and harnesses out of condoms. It will be linked into the bio on my thing because it's Okfokosh, which is a Chata term, so it's hard to spell.
Okay,
Thank you.
and I have been your host, moderator, Blade. I'd rather have you go give your attention to these two lovely people, but if you are curious about me in any capacity, I'm a drag visual artist, and now I could say award nominated filmmaker. So if you do want to give me any sort of attention, look up my film Blood on the Carpet. You can find it through IMDb or Letterbox, and that should show you how to view the film or leave a review. But yeah, thank you both so much for joining me in this conversation, and to the audience for having an open ear. And with that being said, I think we're ready to go.
Yeah, Koki, for having
Bye.
me.